Hi, everyone. It's Kara Goldin, and we're here for our very first author talks. Very, very excited to have my first guest, Bruce Tulgan. And we're very, very thrilled to be starting this whole series. I'm going to just quickly give a little bit of background on this. And basically, what we're going to do is we're going to have amazing authors that I want everybody to know about. And we're hoping to do this a couple times a week. It's going to be 20 minutes. Everybody can get 20 minutes out of their day to come and listen to amazing authors. And we're very, very excited. So they will move very quickly. We'll have probably take only a couple of questions at the end. And if there's no questions, I always have questions. So all good. So Bruce is here today, and a little bit about Bruce. I was actually on Bruce's podcast, which it was super, super cool. But Bruce has had 20 books. And so he and I got chatting about this. Actually, my husband and Bruce went to college together. They went to Amherst, and that's how Bruce and I had met. But Bruce is just this amazing management guru more than anything. And I've read all of his books. His most recent book that I have here is The Art of Being Indispensable at Work. But I also want to tap into this other book that I think is super interesting, Bridging the Soft Skills Gap. And Bruce, just because I've got them all here, this was his best-selling book, It's Okay to Be the Boss. So if you haven't read any of these books, you need to go on Amazon or go to your local store now and get these purchased. But yeah, I mean, he is amazing. So anyway,
Sure, that's very kind of you. And might I add, Undaunted is amazing. I guess if somebody's watching your show, they already know your book and they already drink Hint. But
well, thank you. That is really, really awesome. So let's just jump right in. So a couple of things. So The Art of Being Indispensable at Work. Talk to everybody about why you decided to write this book.
Yeah, some people ask me if I wrote it for the pandemic because it is all about people operating in an environment where there's so much uncertainty, where people are facing so many requests. People have too much to do and not enough time. And more people are dealing not just with their boss and with their immediate team, but with people across functions in different divisions and different departments. And what people keep telling me is, I'm inundated by requests. I have more to do than I could possibly make time. And I have to rely on so many people whom I can't hold accountable. So I call it welcome to the collaboration revolution. How do you get things done when lines of authority are so unclear and so much is being demanded of everyone? That was the problem I set out to address in that book. And so much uncertainty, so much change, but it was before the pandemic. And then, of course, the pandemic came along. The book came out in the middle of the pandemic.
So do you think it changes with the pandemic? I mean, are people, now that you've got much more virtual conversations going on, and how do you think that is different?
Well, what I did to try to address the subject in the book was I tried to look at people in the real world who are go-to people, the indispensables, the people who stand the test of time, not people who say yes to everyone and everything, but the people who play the long game of reputation, the people who play the long game of real influence, but they play the long game one moment at a time. And what I found was that what people were doing to be successful, every day I tell people the first person you got to manage every day is yourself. The second person you have to manage every day is everybody else. And that proved to be pretty good advice for the pandemic. Don't say yes to please people. Say yes so that you can deliver for people. And build up your working relationships by making sure the work goes right. A lot of my advice, Kara, is take a walk every day and eat your vegetables. And so that turned out to be pretty good advice for the pandemic.
I love that. That's great. And I think another piece just to add on to that is saying yes with delivery dates, right? I think that that is a key thing. I mean, it sets goals for yourself, but it also sets the timeline so that somebody can actually say, okay, I'm not going to bother them until this date. And I think that that's such a key piece.
Yeah, I mean, everyone talks about accountability, but really what accountability is all about is knowing that you're in a dialogue with somebody and you're going to be giving an account of your performance. Some people say to me, oh, you have to learn how to say no. And I say, no, you have to learn how to say yes.
Yeah, I love the yes side of it much more.
Yeah, yes is where all the action is. So every good no is just to free up time for a better yes. But all the action is yes. And you have to learn how to say yes. Yes with a plan. Yes with ownership of next steps. Yes with sequence and timing. Yes is where all the action is. But because of that, I think people who want to please, they end up being over-promisers. And if you're an over-promiser, you are not going to be an indispensable go-to person.
I think that's so interesting. There was a friend of mine who actually was in my YPO forum. I remember he said something to me once that I'll never forget. He said, when somebody is asking you for a deliverable, you actually, and you should say yes if you think you can do it, but you have the opportunity then to actually set the timeline. Right. And so many, and I think that after you miss timelines, then you start to become not indispensable, right? That's where the whole thing starts to fall apart, or you're rushing to get it done, or there's just a difference of opinion about when you should ultimately be getting something done. So he always said, and I've used this just as an example, that if you're asked for something and you're like, I don't know if I can do it, but yeah, I'm going to go ahead and sign up for it. I think getting that date is really kind of such a key thing.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And if you want to get the date right, what I always tell people is too many people skip over the ask. They skate through the ask.
Yeah.
They skate through the request. And what I always tell people is slow down. When somebody's making an ask, you have an opportunity to treat their need with respect and to treat them with respect. Slow down, ask questions, take notes. And then, sometimes the answer has to be not yet, or I need more information. And then when you say yes, you're in a position to make a plan. The worst thing you can do is be an overpromiser. And if you're an overpromiser, you end up being a juggler. And if you're juggling, you end up dropping the ball.
I totally agree. So this will be unusual, but because Bruce is our first guest, we're allowing him 2 books on here. And actually, I had reached out to him because I was so intrigued with his other book that I mentioned, Bridging the Soft Skills Gap, when did this come out, actually, Bruce?
I think that was 2015. One of the things we've done since 1993 is track young people in the workplace. Now, you may recall back then we were young, and but along the way, yeah, right. But along the way, we've kept our finger on the pulse of the emerging young workforce. And the issue that our clients have been coming to us with over and over again, more and more, is this soft skills gap, that young people are showing up with tremendous technical skills. They're showing up with tremendous energy, with tremendous enthusiasm. They're ready to take over the world. But a lot of the most in-demand soft skills, there's a growing gap in how young people are showing up, and really people of all ages. It's just most evident among the new young workforce.
It's so interesting. And as you and I were talking about, so the Gen Zs are entering the workforce right now, right? After a pandemic, dealing with the first, I guess, totally digitally native group. As I mentioned to somebody the other day, these are also not only kids who have survived a pandemic, but also are post 9/11 babies, most of them. And,
Yeah,
and it's
that's
fascinating.
That's exactly right. I mean, what people always say, well, the millennials and Generation Z are more like children of the 1930s. I mean, they grew up after 9/11. We've been at war for 20 years. The
Mhm.
economy, we had, remember, 2008, 9, 10, now the pandemic. It'd be like they're like children of the 1930s if children in the 1930s had grown up while learning how to think, learn, and communicate attached to handheld supercomputers and raised by helicopter parents on steroids. So
Yeah,
so they're used to
so true.
they're used to being in these nests of protected cocoons, but then plugged into a world of infinite connection and infinite information. There's a reason they seem almost like a new species.
Yeah, definitely. I think that community, I mean, while I believe that millennials brought community into the workforce, or we always knew as Gen Xers that it was important, but I really hand it to the millennials to saying, no, it's like, it's critical. I want to work at a place where I like the people. It really, I think the millennials brought that in, but for the Gen Zers, I think that they want the community in person. They've also gotten used to communities online. It was, I think that the other key thing, I've got four Gen Zers, three in college right now, all
Golly.
very different kids. But I think that the key thing that I see in Gen Zers is that there's no one size fits all, that they're very accepting of lots of different people. They think it's just fine if somebody takes a 2-year gap year as compared to a 1-year gap year,
Right.
and or doesn't go to college at all. I mean, that is not going to drive whether or not they're good co-workers. Really, it's based on, can you participate? Can you do something that's interesting? As I said the other day, I think that Elon Musk is probably at the top of the list for most Gen Zers that I talk to, who is just like, go for it and just go and see what happens. And so anyway, I'd be curious to hear what you think too.
Yeah, I mean, so when we first started looking at young people in the workplace, I was young. My first book was Managing Generation X back in the early 90s. And, but it was like, we need a foosball table in every teaming space. And, can I bring my dog to work? And that's what flexibility was to us. The millennials, as we were tracking the first wave and then the second wave of the millennials, they were sort of the first to say, I want to build a life and then wrap my career around the kind of life I want to have.
Yeah.
With Generation Z is taking everything to a whole new level. It's, as you say, it's like taking all styles are equally valid to a whole new level. I call it infinite diversity thinking. Every single one of them is his or her own unique diversity story. It's intersectionality to the 100th power,
No, I think it's absolutely true. And do you think that they will be, I mean, what happens when we all end up back in the office? Or do you think that the millennials and the Gen Zers will really drive people going back to the office? I mean, what's sort of your take on this topic, which is a hot one that everybody's discussing right now?
Yeah, we just had a book called the HBR Guide to Remote Work just came out. I did the introduction to it, and so I read all the essays in advance. And my view is that we were already moving toward a more distributed workforce, and the trend of remote work was already on fire. And I think that the last year has accelerated this trend by like 10 or 15 years. I suppose that senior executives like you are looking at real estate footprint, travel budget, and not to mention the increased flexibility, convenience, and comfort of those of your team who can work remotely successfully. I think we're likely to come back to work only partially. I think we're likely to come back to work partially going forward. I I don't know that people who can work remotely are ever going to come back 100%. That's my guess. And I think, what a lot of leaders have found, that not having the crutch of place and time to stand in for results has gotten a lot of leaders managing concrete actions and outcomes and results in a better way. It's gotten a lot of leaders doing a lot more high structure, high substance communication. Of course, there's really something lost not being there together with each other.
Totally.
But I think there's also, we've learned a huge amount in the last year about it.
Yeah, I think 2021 will be really defining in that aspect, and I don't think anybody has a clear answer. I agree with you. I don't think we're all going back into the office 5 days a week, and it's but I think 2021 is really where the innovation in that sense will happen. So I'd love to take some questions real quick. Let's see. What's this? Let's say that. Well,
how do you define happiness?
Yeah, how do you define happiness?
Oh, that's a big question. How do you define happiness? Well, look, as a leader, I think the way I would define, most of my clients define happiness is fewer unnecessary problems being identified and solved quickly, resources being well planned, people going in the right direction, getting rid of low performers, retaining high performers, and being able to delegate work. As an individual, I think it's being able to wrap your career around the kind of life you want to have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I always talk about happiness too, or I think the happiest people are the ones that are learning and that are really going out of their way to learn something new. And it's and at every level. So that is yeah. So those are the people that are, you call it challenging yourself. And, no matter if you're a CEO or, you're just starting out in your career, I think it's so important to always find a place where you're a little scared, right? And you're learning things, because those are the people that are really going out and challenging themselves. So I absolutely love that. So here's another one. We're considering Tuesday, Thursday in the office and Monday, Friday from home, relying on everyone to do their part and want to reward them with respect and freedom to make it work for them. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I always tell people, if you want to earn more autonomy, demonstrate that you take responsibility. You want to earn more freedom, demonstrate that you hold yourself to a high standard, demonstrate mastery. And so that's what I tell individuals: demonstrate mastery, demonstrate responsibility, deliver, and you will earn so much autonomy and flexibility. What I'm saying to business leaders is, I don't know that I would. I mean, look, you want to have some predictability about when everyone's going to be in the office together. But my guiding principle is, think about good business reasons for people to be together in proximity. It's the propinquity effect, being together. And make sure that we're bringing people together for really good reasons, and so that we're getting a return on investment of that proximity, that propinquity, that working together.
I absolutely think that is critical. And I think that the one other thing that we don't have a lot of time to go into, but the communication, I think is really key. And mastering, I can just say, especially for the Gen Zer crowd, that it's when you're texting somebody and you're asking them a question and then there's no response, you're not sure whether or not somebody's actually reading it, whether they're getting it. So especially entering the workforce, something that I've shared with, my college kids is, tell your boss, okay, got it, whatever. Like, it's a two-way communication. You don't just stop it there. It's not a direction necessarily. Make it a conversation, I guess.
Yeah, dialogue. Yeah. What I tell young people every day is, show up early, stay late, dot your I's, cross your T's, say please and thank you, and create extreme alignment, up, down, sideways, and diagonal. Extreme alignment, over report, over communicate. High structure, high substance communication is really the key to leading from wherever you are. So don't pretend to have authority you don't have. Don't try to be a steamroller. Create clarity so that you can deliver.
I absolutely agree. So books again, The Art of Being Indispensable at Work and Bridging the Soft Skills Gap here, and Amazon, any other book places out there. Bruce Tulgan, thank you so much for coming on and being our first author talk. So really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for stopping in.
Thank you,
and
Kara.
we're going to do a lot more of this. So thanks everyone.
Thank you so much.